Well, tonight, for the first time, Miss Arkansas USA Rylie Wagner is sharing a story about her encounter with a serial attacker. She says her awareness of her surroundings saved her life, and now she wants to help other women. Channel 7's Elicia Dover is on your side with how her experience connects to another high-profile case.
It was a story that swept the country. A beauty queen found dead in her Russellville apartment. It's been nearly 17 years since Nona Dirksmeyer was brutally murdered. The man tried twice for her murder, but never convicted. Gary Dunn, in a strange, twisted fate, now sits in prison for his encounter with a different beauty queen in the same town. She's speaking out for the first time and has a message for women everywhere.
Miss Arkansas USA 2022 is Ozark's Rylie Wagner. That means our first runner-up is Springdale Mackenzie Hinderberger.
A crowning moment for 22-year-old Rylie Wagner, the culmination of a long pageant career. She'll now compete for Miss USA.
Told my mom as a child that I was going to be on that stage one day, and now I'm going to be, and it just feels like a dream still.
A dream that for Wagner seemed so far out of reach just a few years ago. An 18-year-old from Ozark, leaving home for the first time, going to Arkansas Tech University in Russellville, she joined a sorority and made friends. But soon her path would cross eerily with the fate of another Arkansas beauty queen.
Is a song about love and loss. Translated to English, it means "with you I part," or "time to say goodbye."
My son's girlfriend, I think she's dead. It was a terrible accident.
Okay, what kind of accident, ma'am?
I don't know, ma'am.
Tell me what her name is again.
Her name is Nona Dirksmeyer.
Nona Dirksmeyer?
Yes, ma'am.
13 years earlier, Arkansas Tech University student Nona Dirksmeyer, a Miss Arkansas contestant, was found murdered in her off-campus apartment in 2005. Gary Dunn was charged with her brutal beating.
Had you been following, back in 2006 at that time, had you been following the Nona Dirksmeyer case?
Yes, I actually had grown up hearing about that because I do compete in pageantry, and that was something that my mom always warned me about, was to be extra cautious because I do compete in pageantry, and she just always instilled in me to be aware.
Dunn's criminal history is long and storied. Sent to prison for attacking a woman here on a Russellville jogging trail in 2002. After getting out, he was charged with Dirksmeyer's murder in 2006, tried twice, with both trials ending on a hung jury. Dunn was then arrested for unrelated weapons charges and sent back to prison. In 2018, he was released on parole, but in less than 4 months, he would try to strike again in the same town. It was the evening before final exams. Returning from errands, Wagner was driving in her car, headed to her dorm to study. She noticed someone was following her.
I remember thinking to myself how absurd it was because of how closely he was following me. And that's when I just started paying attention to what kind of vehicle he was driving, and I noticed that it was a man in the car, and I just really started observing everything just because I had a feeling that something wasn't right.
She pulled into a parking space.
And that's when I noticed that he had blocked me in.
With his car blocking her in, she was trapped and alone.
And that's when he tried to force me to get out of the car and told me to get out of the car. And for a moment I froze and I wasn't sure what to do because everything was just happening so fast. It was so surreal and I was in shock. And he just kept telling me to get out of my car. And he kept trying to open my car door, but luckily I had already locked it as he was approaching the vehicle.
Wagner says Dunn saw her dialing 911 through the window and left.
And he chose to turn left and just drive slowly in front of me and just stare me down, and then that's when he sped off and he went and later tried to abduct other victims.
Less than 17 minutes later, police would receive another call from a woman in this parking lot, claiming Dunn had gotten even bolder, attempting to force her into a vehicle, but she was able to break free. Dunn was arrested that night for attempted kidnapping. Later, some chilling details.
That is when we found out that he actually had ropes and knives in his vehicle.
Wagner says being aware saved her life.
I just think that I'm very lucky that I got away from the situation and that I was paying attention and aware of my surroundings, where I think that there could have just been a different outcome.
What could have been is something she's fought to overcome.
I struggled with insomnia, post-traumatic stress, and I would also have night sweats. And after I took time to really work through all of those things that were happening to me, I asked myself, how can I turn this negative situation into a positive situation?
She is now lobbying for victims' rights, working on a bill to protect victims' information. She's also concerned with the alarming trend of repeated offenders attacking again.
I would really just like to see violent repeated offenders get stricter sentencing. I know that the justice system charges the crime versus the history, but a lot of these other women that have been getting abducted, their offenders are repeated violent offenders too.
And she's made it her mission to speak to women about staying aware and effective self-defense.
Even if my story only reaches one person, then that's potentially one life being saved, and that makes it all worth it to me.
Dunn was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted kidnapping, but he only has to serve a third of that sentence, and he's eligible for parole next year. Prosecutors chose not to try Dunn for a third time in the murder of Nona Dirksmeyer, so that is still an open case with no conviction.
Elicia Dover for us tonight. Elicia, thank you. Rylie leaves next week to compete in the Miss USA competition, which will take place on October 1st, streaming on FYI and Hulu, and certainly we wish her good luck.
According to the National Cancer Institute, the average age of a woman being diagnosed with breast cancer is between 55 and 64 years old. But that doesn't mean if you're not that age that you're immune. Our Elicia Dover is on your side tonight with a reminder, you know when something is wrong and to not give up until you find answers.
When Brittany Zuber was diagnosed with breast cancer at 26 years old, she had to fight just to get an initial scan and biopsy of a lump she was told was probably nothing. We first brought you her story nearly 7 years ago. Now she's in the fight of her life again and has a message for women everywhere. This was a freshly inked tattoo on Brittany Zuber's arm back in 2015. We were with her as she was fighting stage 2 invasive breast cancer. Her fight started with just convincing doctors and insurance something was wrong.
Well, he said that a biopsy is recommended. It's not required. And, you know, she's young. This is probably not cancer. It's probably a cyst.
Probably wasn't good enough for Brittany. Armed with her notebook of questions, she teamed up with Dr. Sam McCool. 14 rounds of chemo, surgeries, infections, more surgeries. Finally beating it a year later. Dr. Oz surprising her with a vacation.
Hi, Dr. Oz.
You're actually on the phone with my entire audience. We're here in the studio.
6.5 years later, we're back with Brittany. The tattoo is still there. And today, that old familiar arm poking and prodding. The cancer is back. This time, it's stage 4 metastatic, a diagnosis she shockingly had to fight for once again.
So I went in and they said, you know, well, that's a cyst on your neck, which is the same story I got with my tumor originally, you know, so I'm like, no, this is not normal.
4 months of the cyst growing, more lymph node swelling, and back pain going unanswered.
I did not have enough evidence to warrant a scan. And then when I demanded, that's when they said, okay, but then it was coded wrong, and so insurance denied it.
So she took her fight here to Kartai, back to the man who fought with her the first time.
And at that point, I tracked down Dr. McCool, came here. He had zero problem getting it approved.
Dr. McCool told her the cancer spread to her bones and lymph nodes.
He said, I don't want you to feel despair. And that's hard when you're looking at this diagnosis. But I know that he said, I don't want you to feel despair. We're going to handle it. I trust him.
Kartai's team is using newly approved drugs on Brittany with the goal of starving the cancer.
But they improve survival, and this is something that has been difficult in cancer circles, to bring drugs that not only it puts the lid on the cancer, but allows you to live longer and better.
Because the cancer is spread to different areas, surgery and radiation are impossible. Kartai is working to acquire a new machine called Reflection that could help Brittany in the future. It's a CT, PET scan, and radiation machine in one, able to treat all of her spots in a single sitting.
It's going to apply the radiation in a very targeted way to the lesions wherever they are in the body and while you are on the same table. So a lot of things are happening, and I'm very excited about what the future, hides for us.
Dr. McCool says he has hope for a few reasons.
I have a lot of hope because of the type of disease that she has, but I have a lot of hope because she's Brittany, and I know that if that doesn't work, we have other things we can do, and I know that she will walk with me the distance to make it happen.
Her message to everyone: you are your own health advocate, no matter how many times you have to fight.
Never ever quit fighting. If you think something's wrong, it doesn't matter who you have to go through, what you have to do, but you need to find out what it is.
And I just talked to Brittany. She says that the tumors are shrinking, so that's amazing news. She tells me she hopes within a few months to have no evidence of active disease. On your side, I'm Elicia Dover.
All right, Elicia, we're rooting for her for sure. Brittany's treatment will likely last forever, but her prognosis is looking good for the next couple of years, and she says hopefully much longer than that. We again wish her the best in her fight.